All right, joining me tonight is a man who recently became a free agent and is looking for his next opportunity to continue his professional football career as a quarterback. Having most recently played with the Bay Area Panthers, a coaching change left the team making changes and Isaac Hurd was let go. However, the dynamic athlete has joined me tonight to talk about his career so far, his goals for 2023, and more. So we're going to play a quick highlight video, and then I'll bring Isaac right on.
Isaac grew up in the church. His father, Eric, a pastor. His mother, the worship leader. Spirituality is a huge part of his life. Faith getting him to this point tonight. Valve wide right. Forward motion. Here comes the heat. Hurd lets him go. Takes a shot. Looking for Snoop. Bravo!
So as you can tell by that, this man's got an arm that can literally throw the length of a field. He's also runs something like a 4.3 in the 40. So just a dynamic athlete. Thank you for joining me tonight, Mr. Hurd. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and thank you for having me. This has been a blessing.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Like I told you off camera, I've been a fan of yours for a while. Luckily we were able to connect, and here we are. I get to learn a little bit more about your career firsthand. So I'm super excited about you joining me, and thank you once again for coming on.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Absolutely. So let's get this started with a quick introduction in your own words for anybody who may not have seen you. And while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and play another quick highlight video of your 2021 pro workout film.
Awesome. So basically, my name is Isaac Hurd. I am a quarterback from Ewa Beach, Hawaii. I was born and raised in Hawaii. My parents met there in the Navy. And I grew up there, so it's home. And growing up there, it's, football is big as well. So everybody's dream is to be the next big thing out of Hawaii. So that's, what I want to do. One of the things I want to do, getting into my professional career.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's been a while since I've asked anybody this question. I kind of got away from it for a while there. But at what age did you develop a love for the game, and how did you get involved with organized football?
I started playing football when I was 4 years old. I remember when I was 3, actually, the year before, my mom took me to go sign up, and she asked me, "Hey, do you want to play football?" My older brother was playing, and I said the funniest thing. Now that I look back on it, I was like, no, Mom, I don't want to play because I don't want everybody in the stadium looking at me. But sure enough, a year later, when I was 4, I started with we called it Mighty Mite Flag. I played Mighty Mite Flag, and I don't even know how, but I ended up at quarterback. Maybe I could throw the ball at a young age, and I was athletic, but I kind of don't remember me deciding I wanted to be a quarterback. It kind of just happened, and I think that was God's plan. Looking back at it now, and ever since then, it was quarterback.
Absolutely. So you go on to attend high school at James Campbell High in Hawaii, correct?
Yes, sir.
I found that up until this last season, you actually still held the single game passing record for the school with 388 yards. So talk to me about this game way back in 2013 that allowed you to throw for nearly 400 yards on the day.
First of all, before, I should have mentioned in the beginning, but I grew up with my faith being the standard and the foundation as a Christian. So that has been my driving force. It's been my reason why since I've been young, and I know it's one of the reasons why I've been able to be successful. Even with the highs and the lows. But getting back to that game, actually, one of our prior games, I believe it was our homecoming. I always thought it would be cool, to set some type of record in high school. And my homecoming game, we played one of our rival teams, and we were doing great in the air. And I ended up finishing the game with 342 yards passing. And at that time, I had coach had taken me out in the third quarter, and he had our backup play the rest of the game, the end of the third quarter. So at the end of the game, one of the interviewers comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, how do you feel about being?" I believe I was 2 yards away, 2 or 3 yards away from the record at that time. He's like, "How do you feel about being this close to the record and coach pulled you out early? You could have broken the record." And I was like, I was kind of blown away. I was like, "What? I didn't even know, I didn't even know I was that close to a record." Um, but I kind of just let it go. Went home, talked to my dad. He told me, um, if God has it for you, then it'll come. You don't have to worry about it. I don't have to, what if and shoulda, coulda, and woulda. So fast forward to that game where I do break the record. It was the first game of the state playoffs. Um, and it was a hard fought game all the way into the end. And sure enough, I ended up breaking the record. It was awesome. My first win. I believe that was the first time our school had gone to the state playoffs in the Division One. So it was awesome.
That's amazing. That's amazing. What a story that is. So during high school, as we talked about off camera, you were actually a three-sport athlete, playing basketball, running track, as well as playing football. Now, obviously, I asked you off camera, but were there ever any doubts for you as to what was your favorite sport of the three?
Um, I don't think so. Partly because I had played football so long. My second sport, I call it, the second love in sports. My second love in sports, it was basketball, and I enjoyed basketball. Basketball was kind of like my fun sport. It was right after football, and I had a bunch of guys that I played with. We would compete and challenge each other. We had a pretty good team. I ran track mainly to focus on football, so that I can improve my speed and things like that. But it's always been football. Um, I've always enjoyed. I don't know. It's just the position, being a quarterback. There's nothing like it. So I enjoy, having the ball in my hands. I enjoy being in control of our offense, and I believe it's kind of through that I learned, how to be a better leader and how to relate to people. And I found my way of leadership, because I know a lot of people, or some people, will yell and scream if they want you to do something a certain way, and others will be too passive. So I wanted to find a middle ground and how to relate to people, to bring camaraderie and to build the best relationships, because that's what you need in a team, especially for your linemen who you need to block for you, and for your receivers who you need to catch for you, because quarterback can't do it alone. So yeah, it's always been football.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, being that you're obviously an unbelievable athlete, I mean, talk to me about your recruitment process at the time. Were teams recruiting you as a quarterback, or were they asking you for a position change right out of the box?
Um, some were asking for a position change, but I didn't really get a lot of looks coming out of high school, because I didn't start until my senior year, and that's a whole different story. But I didn't really get a lot of looks. I didn't know the process of getting to college. Growing up, it was kind of like I just assumed if you did well enough, if you put up numbers, and all of that, that people will come knocking on your door. But being from Hawaii, being from a smaller public school that hasn't pushed out a lot of D1 and professional athletes that are known, it was kind of hard. So I had to kind of learn that the hard way. Signing day was coming up, and I still didn't know where I was going to be playing. And that's where God came in. I prayed and I asked God to show me the way. And I think it was like a week before signing day, and I still didn't know where I was going to be playing. And I knew it probably wasn't going to be a D1, but I just wanted to play, to fulfill my dream, to pursue my dream of playing in the NFL one day. But just so happened, one of our defensive coordinator at the time, Coach Vince, he had played for us, the coach of Southern Oregon, back in his day, Coach Howard. So he had connections there. So he hit up the staff there and sent them my highlights, And from there, the connections went through, and they gave me a call, gave me an offer, and it was a done deal. And in less than a week. So that in itself was awesome, because I was like, man, like, did I come this far just to flop? But God came through.
That's amazing. Right there at the last second too.
Hmm.
So obviously you kind of just answered this next question, but ultimately what was your driving force in deciding to attend Southern Oregon University, which is obviously a very long way from Hawaii?
Driving force has and will always be to glorify Jesus. My relationship with God has been my, like I said before, my foundation, and it's all I know. And it's through that I want to share to others, and help others to experience God in the same way. So my dad would always encourage me to make sure that I put God first in everything I did, because, to be honest, I didn't even know what I wanted to study in college. Um, there were the several options that I considered, but I was like, none of them really took my eye. So I was kind of go like, I'm just going for football. It was kind of like my mentality. If I'm not playing football, I probably wouldn't be going to college. And I know that's not the best mentality to have, but that was my standing point at that point.
Hey, that's fair. That's fair. I mean,
Hmm.
let's be honest. I don't think most of us really wanted to pursue school after high school. It was
Yeah,
more, a necessity to, pursue
right.
whatever career you were going into. So, hey, whether it's on the football field or in a regular 9 to 5, as a wherever as a businessman, I mean,
Hmm.
obviously, we all had to do our own due diligence to get where we're at today.
Right.
Um, so at SOU, you redshirt as a
Hmm.
freshman quarterback, but they
Hmm.
ultimately decided to move you to wide receiver during your redshirt freshman season.
Hmm.
Tell me the story behind this move, and how did the staff approach you? What was your reaction at the time?
Um, so I played through my redshirt year as a quarterback. I was a scout team quarterback. I would, do what I can to help our starting D, succeed. And not credit to just myself. It was a team effort, but I was glad I was able to help our team, and at least in that way, and as a scout, win a championship. We won a championship, national championship that year. So that was one of the things that I kind of took pride in. However, my learning curve was a little sharper than it could have been, because I hadn't really been taught fundamentals in terms of throwing the ball and footwork as a quarterback. So when I got there, it was almost learned from scratch. I had to relearn how to throw, or certain tweaks to my throwing motions, and um, learn coverages, and there's everyone has a learning curve. And it was cold, so early mornings, my hands would be numb, and I'd be barely able to hold the ball, and whatnot. I can make all the excuses in the world, but ultimately, the coaches decided that maybe the best thing would be to switch to receiver. Um, so after that, call my dad up. He's my mentor, my spiritual father, my friend. Call him up, and he's like, "Hey, like, you got to make a decision. Either you're going to transfer, or you're going to stick it out, switch to receiver, and maybe down the line, when you mature and things like that, you can go back to quarterback and give it another go." Um, but ultimately, we ended up deciding that we were just going to stick it out at receiver. So, my dad was like, even if you transfer now, who's to say that you won't have the same issue when you go somewhere else? Because you're still going to have to learn. You're going to have to grind. You're going to have to beat out other quarterbacks who may be more experienced and things like that. So I switched to receiver. It was hard. I cried my tears, because up until that point, since the age of 4, I had played quarterback every year. So it was all I knew. If you mentioned football, it was the quarterback position. So I cried my tears and just decided to put my head down. I prayed. The Bible says if you acknowledge God in all your ways, he'll direct your path. So I acknowledged God, and he gave me peace about it at the time. And I started the journey to transition to receiver. And um, you want me to go on about that? Okay. So receiver, obviously, it was a hard transition. I didn't know it was going to be that hard because being a runner my whole life, or not a running quarterback, but a passing quarterback that can run. Um, I thought that I could just go out there at slot receiver and run like I usually do out of the pocket. But no, I had to learn that receiver is a totally different game, and you got to have a different mentality, a different mindset, different fundamentals, different basics. Things that these college receivers have been doing their whole lives, like I was at quarterback. And they got it locked down. I had to learn it at the college level. So that was a test in itself. Began to look up information on how to better myself, techniques. Had to learn the hard way in practices and doing perimeter drills with the linebackers, having to block them and getting put on my butt. But eventually, over time, lots of prayers and lots of hard work on my own, I began to improve at receiver, and it began to be, a little bit more, I wouldn't say easy, but I began to understand the position a little bit more. So it wasn't as hard as when I first started. But at the time, we had some studs. We had some studs at receiver there. So I was behind, maybe 5 seniors at the slot position. So I had to wait my turn. I asked a lot of questions. There were so many guys there who encouraged me. They told me to keep going. They told me they admired, my will to make this commitment. And so there was a lot of people that went into, it wasn't just me. It wasn't just me. First of all, it was all God. And second of all, it was a lot of people encouraging me, because definitely there was a time where I was like, forget this. Let me just pack up and go home, and I'll go work, a 9 to 5. So go ahead.
Well, let me just say, from all football fans everywhere, we are super happy that you didn't decide to pack it in and ultimately work a 9 to 5. You belong on a football field, man. I mean, we obviously showed that short clip earlier, and we're about to show some more here in a bit of your pro film. So yeah, definitely super happy you didn't decide to hang up the jersey and the cleats there.
Thank you so much, man.
So obviously, as I mentioned in the preamble at the beginning, you're a dynamic athlete. Obviously, coaches are not attempting to move you to wide receiver if you're not, obviously. So we talked about it a little bit. Talk to me about what kind of, drill numbers you would have. I mean, in the 40 and the 3-cone.
The last 40 I ran was last year. So I had transitioned back to quarterback. I'll talk about that later, my time after college. But transitioned back to quarterback in, I believe, 2020, December of 2020. Trained for 5-6 months, and then went to my first pro combine as a quarterback. So that was last May of 2021, I believe. So at that one, I ran a 4.5 40. But prior to that combine, my fastest time unofficial was 4.35. So I was still working on making it consistent, especially because the 40, we thought that, if you're just fast, if you're fast, you got to be born with it. But, we learned that this is something that you can actually drill, you can actually work at. With the 40, there's steps that you can take and fundamentals with your stride and all that you can do to help increase your 40. So that was kind of the process I was working on. I didn't quite get that 4.3 consistent, but I knew at that point that it was achievable. I didn't know at the time that I'll be able to run that speed, but that's that's what I'm chasing in terms of my speed.
Absolutely, absolutely. So obviously the indoor game's a little bit different, which we'll get into a little bit later. So you need to be an athlete in the indoor game. You don't get a lot
Mm-hmm.
of time to throw a deep ball or anything like that. But like I said, we'll get into that in just a bit. But your final season in college in 2018 ends up being your best season, which also happened to coincide with them using you more than just a receiver. I mean, you had a touch as a runner. You also threw a pass for a touchdown. You ultimately ended the season with 23 touches for about 330 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
When you threw that touchdown pass, was there something that kind of clicked and told you, I still belong as a quarterback?
Um, like I said before, this whole time through the whole journey, um, I'm I'm trying to focus on God. I'm trying to make the best of the situation that I didn't think would happen. Nobody. I didn't go to college thinking I was going to switch to receiver. So I did have some really hard times. I had to lean on God, Christ as my strength to endure through those times. And my dad would always tell me, you never know. God works in mysterious ways. You never know. Maybe, you'll go back to quarterback your senior year. He's just throwing it out there to encourage me. So when coach put in that, it was a trick play, the reverse pass, when he put it in and, he told me he wanted me to do it. He knew I was came in as a quarterback. I was stoked. I was like, man, I really hope that, we get to do this in the game and that it would be successful. So ultimately, coach calls it. It was the right call. Throw that pass, touchdown. And in my heart, after the game, I kind of broke down. I was like, this is full circle for me. And for in that moment, even though I had to switch positions, I still knew that God had done that just for me. Um, so it was full circle. I was glad. I was like, man, if I go out like this, I got to throw a passing touchdown in the college level. I'd be good. So it was a great moment. I really thank my coach for putting that in. It even gave me hope that maybe I could play again, quarterback, but I didn't know at the time.
Absolutely. I mean, that's kind of an amazing story how that all came full circle, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
So while I was doing my research, I hit a bit of a wall, admittedly, which I hate to do. But in with that situation, this gives you a little bit of an opportunity to kind of tell your story for the next couple seasons. So in between 2019 and 2022, where were you at? What were you doing? How were you kind of spending this time before you ended up getting your first opportunity?
Okay, so this is cool. Let me tell you how God works. At the end of my senior season of college, our team we had this we call it um, I think passing of the torch. It's like a passing of a torch where we'd have a campfire and the seniors would talk to the players who are still up and coming and encourage them and give them advice. What you went through in college and stuff like that. So ultimately, the last thing I ended up telling the team was that God is faithful. And I had told them that even though my college career didn't go like I wanted it to, and I said that um, not even knowing if I'd ever play football again, because I wasn't sure what my plans were. Um, so fast forward, I graduate college, um, not sure if I want to pursue the pros or not. I thought that if I did pursue the pros, that it would have to be at receiver. So I acknowledged God. I asked him if I could pursue this. He gave me the green light, but this time it was at receiver. So I was like, man, I haven't played quarterback in so long. The only way of me making it would probably be at receiver because that's what I finished my college career at. So I took some time after college and I rested and I worked a little bit, and then I started training, and training for a receiver. So I got in contact with some people back home who could help me out with some drills. To Samson Ongwa is his name. He played at UH. He played some arena ball as well. I asked him, hey, could you help me out? Because, I got some things that I need to improve at the receiver position if I hope to make it at that. And I thought maybe even I could play running back, but I wasn't sure. I was just, walking it out day by day. So fast forward to combine, and I believe it was 2020. I went to my first pro combine as a receiver, and it didn't go as well as I hoped it would. I slipped on a lot of routes. I was still a little shaky in some of the things that the scouts look for where they needed to be solid. And when I went there, I was like, I saw some guys there. There was like solid receivers, man, like guys who maybe got overlooked. And I'm like, man, they seem out of my league. So that was kind of discouraging. I finished that combine. And granted, this whole time, when I was back home training, I would bump into people, or people would hit me up on social media, and they would, when they would see that I was training, and they say, hey, what are you training for? I'm like, yeah, I'm training for a combine as a receiver. And they would tell me, like, as a receiver, like, what are you doing? Like, you're a quarterback. You've always been a quarterback. So I was telling them, like, the same thing I told you. I haven't played quarterback since 2015. So, my best shot is probably at receiver. And I would tell that. People would come up to me the whole time. They would tell me, hey, I thought you was a quarterback. Why'd you switch? You should be trying out at the professional level at where we know you're good at playing. But God used that. He used those as like hints to me. And the final hint for me to switch back to quarterback was when me and my wife, we were engaged, and we went to have our marriage counseling with one of our pastor friends. And I kind of explained the story to him about college and all that. And basically he told me, like, hey, what is your passion? And I said, my passion is quarterback. That's all I've known since I was 4 years old. And he told me, he kind of corrected me. He's like, hey, if you're going to do this, and if you say that you want to do this for God, you need to do this at where you're passionate, because everything else will be, going through the motions. And he was right. I was going through the motions. I was doing it just because I felt I had to. And if there was any hope of, me making it pro, it had to be a receiver, but I was wrong. And he corrected me there. And I'm so glad he did, Pastor Boji. So since that point, I was like, okay, like, God, I hear you. You're giving me the green light to go back to quarterback now. And it was daunting, because I'm like, I'm seeing these people on TV playing at the highest level, and I'm like, how am I going to get there? How am I going to get to that point? I got some videos on my Instagram where it shows me throwing where I started. I grabbed a mattress from our sofa. I put it up on the fence, and I would use that to throw, because I didn't have anybody to throw with. So I was like, shoot, if I'm going to do this, then I need to get to work. So I would use the mattress, throw at it, work on my accuracy, work on my form. I put a few holes in the fence, and thank my dad for, not getting mad at me. But at that point, I was like, Lord, I need something better than a fence and the mattress. So I prayed for God to give me connections. And not too much longer, I hit up the same guy that I hit up for receiver to help me with my training. I hit him up. I was like, hey, I made the decision to go back to quarterback. Could you help me out? Could I come throw to your receivers, or any way you could help me? It would be a blessing. So he told me, hey, yeah, I know this guy. He trains quarterbacks on the island. Coach Kaylee Tilton, and he was like, "Hey, here's his number. Hit him up, and hopefully he can help you out." So I hit up Coach. He's like, "Yeah, let's meet. Let's see where you're at this point." I meet with him one time in December of 2020. In December of 2020, met with him one time, and then just so he could gauge where I was at, and even he knew I had some work to do because, my throwing was kind of rough. I had been away for so long, I had lost some of the mechanics, and some of the mechanics I didn't learn. And the quarterback position has been evolving so quickly, in the last 10 years. So I began training with him, and we trained all the way up until May of 2021 when I went to my first combine. So after that combine, I felt I had did well. Coach was proud of me. Family was proud of me for picking up quarterback after 5-6 years and going to my first pro combine as a quarterback and doing well. I got some good feedback from the coaches and scouts there. Of course, I had some things that I had to go back and refine and work on going forward, but I was still stoked that in this short amount of time, God would bring me from having no hope in ever playing football again to playing, at a high level, in just a matter of months. So it was nothing but the work of God. I can't take any credit for it. And so fast forward. Thank you for bearing with me.
You're good.
Yes, sir. Fast forward to when was it? So we trained after that combine. We trained all the way through. I was still looking to. I didn't know how I was going to get into somebody's team or organization. I didn't even know where to start. I thought maybe CFL. I thought maybe XFL. But I was like, man, I got to get in somewhere just to get some experience again, get my feet wet again, so that I can actually be competitive again because I hadn't done it in so long. So in March, was it March? Earlier this year, March of this year, Coach Chris Reynolds of the Idaho Horsemen hits me up on Instagram. He's like, "Hey, I saw your highlights, your training film on I don't know if it was Instagram or YouTube." Someone sent it to him and he saw it and he was like, "Hey, maybe I'll give this guy a call." He wasn't sure if I'd even make the trip all the way to Idaho, but he threw it out there anyways and he hit me up and he's like, "Hey, he liked what he saw, so he's like, would you be interested in coming down and playing for us?" So I, of course, acknowledged God in all my ways. I prayed about it. I talked to my wife about it, talked to my dad, talked to my coach, and got the green light for that. So in 1 week, because their season was starting, in 2 weeks from when he hit me up. So in 1 week, I resigned from my job. I was working security at the time. Packed up all our stuff, me and my wife, and we were out. And yeah, that's where we ended up.
That's crazy. What a crazy story. I mean, I can't imagine making the trip from Hawaii to Idaho on faith alone, basically. So this seems like a perfect time to play your highlights from the Idaho Horsemen. So here they
Awesome.
are. So obviously you can find all of these highlight videos in full version on his YouTube channel. It is literally just Isaac Hurd. So look him up on YouTube if you want to see all of his highlights. There's a lot more on here that we're going to play. There's also more on there that I did not grab to play. So definitely check out his channel, like and subscribe, help him in his journey going forward as a professional quarterback. So
Awesome.
Basically, as you just mentioned, I mean, this opportunity more or less came out of the blue. I mean, this wasn't something that you reached out to Chris Reynolds. I mean, he kind of found you by happenstance, more or less, right?
Exactly.
Mean,
That's like I was telling you, that's how God works. Like when I say God is good, it's not just religious banter. It's because I've gone through it, and God has never failed me. Um, so that's why I tell people. That's why I talk to people about God so much, is because He's brought me through these things that were so hard, and things that I couldn't have gotten through on my own. And speaking of happenstance, through all this time, before I got the call, there were many times where I was like, man, is this worth it? Is this actually going to turn out like I'm believing it is? Those dark days where I actually have notes on my phone where I wrote down in 2020 where it was like, Isaac, remember days like today where you don't know what the heck is going on. You don't know how God's going to come through, but He is. And days like today where you're, crying on your face, asking God to make a way, and you're believing Him for it. So that I have notes like that in 2020, 2021. So fast forward, it's like, wow, like look what God did. And even up until Coach hit me up, I was praying hard. I was asking God to open the door. And sure enough, the door came from a place that I would not have even known, because I didn't know there was even a team. I didn't know the American West Football Conference was a thing. I didn't even know very much about the indoor game at this point. But I was like, shoot, when the door opens, you take it. And I knew it was God, so I took it.
That's an amazing story. Like I said, just crazy. It's crazy to take that leap of faith like you did. But it obviously paid off for you, because in week 1, you ended up splitting time with Austin Schaefer. What was it like stepping back on the field again for the first time as a quarterback since 2015, like you mentioned?
Ooh, so, of all things, stepping back on the field in the indoor game, which you talked about, is quicker. It's smaller. The field is smaller. So I was like, whoa, like what is going on? Like everything seemed quicker. Um, Passing lanes were smaller. Windows were smaller. So I didn't mind. I didn't mind sitting back, to learn, to soak it all in, um, and just wait for my turn. I knew that promotion comes from God. So if God brought me here after not even believing I'd play football again, if He brought me here, then I'm gonna wait patiently. I'm gonna be faithful to the process. And so eventually, after some time, through practice, through our practices, the game began to slow down again. So it was like, man, like it was like I never left at that point. When something is built into you, and it comes back, and it came back quicker. I was praying and asking God to help me in this process, because there were some bumpy times, even in practice, even in the game. There were some bumpy times, but I was just glad to be back.
That's amazing. That's amazing once again. But your performance in week 1 left something to be desired. But your performance in week 2, you were literally perfect. You completed all of your passing attempts. You managed 105 yards and 4 touchdowns. Talk to me about this game and how it must have felt to get back on the field and not only like find success, but dominate. I think you guys ended up winning the game like 83-9.
Yeah, it was
something like
nuts.
that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So go ahead.
So yeah, so after that first game, I had gotten in maybe in the third quarter, um, to help. Coach wanted to make a change to the QBs, to see if a change would help in the comeback, to make a comeback. So I went in there. I just did what I knew to do since I was 4. Made some mistakes. One play, I think it might have been like it was on the first drive I got in that first game. Fumble, not fumble, but forgot the handoff and like bumped into the running back, and then had to try and scramble and make a play. I was just it was a little clumsy, but it worked out. So coming into that second game, coach liked what I did to end the first game. So he's like, hey, I'm going to give you a chance to start. So um, so I go in and things start popping. It was kind of like it was phase two. It was like you know the window's there, so instead of hesitating, you have to throw it. There's some times where I would hesitate for the former game, and even the game after, I would hesitate, even though I knew what I saw. As a quarterback, you commit to what you see, and what you know. Not always what you see, because sometimes the DBs mask their coverages and stuff. But I began to see open receivers. Um, this game is a little different with the personnel, and it's only 8 guys, so um, sometimes it seems like with the small field that it's kind of cluttered, but there are windows. So I just had to find those windows, and when you get a good thing going, you try to keep it going. So glory to God on that.
Absolutely. So you spoke about it before. You had a brief stay in Idaho. I believe it was a little over a month total. There was a couple games in that stretch that were ultimately forfeits by the other team due to some organizational issues. But ultimately, in 3 games, you produced 296 total yards, 9 touchdowns to just 2 interceptions. And this is when Bay Area ultimately came calling. So tell us how the Panthers approached you at the time.
So this is another awesome story. So prior to me getting picked up to Idaho, I had went to one of my workouts with my QB coach back home in Hawaii, and just so happened, I know it's God, but just so happened, one of the people that my coach knew was the father of the offensive coordinator at Bay Area Panthers at the time. So my coach was like, "Hey, could you ask your son, if he'd be willing to take a look at me?" So I talked to coach. His name was Terry Smith, I believe. Terry, yeah, I believe it's Terry Smith. And I hit him up, and I sent him my highlights, and he's like, "Hey, we like what we see over here, but we already signed 3 quarterbacks." So basically, they told me they were going to put me on their scout list. If a position opened up, they would hit me up. So eventually, not too much long later, I think it was that week. That week, I had the conversation with Coach Idaho. Coach Reynolds hit me up. So I went to Idaho, and I believe it was, when was it? April 30th, I believe it was, where Coach Kurt Bryan, he was the head coach at the Bay Area Panthers at that time, calls me, and he's like, "Hey, this is the head coach of the Bay Area Panthers. We want you to come play for us," basically. And I was like, "What?" Me and my wife were in the car doing DoorDash in Idaho, and he calls me, and he's like, "Yeah, like, go talk to your dad about it, talk to your wife about it, pray about it, and call me back, with the answer in 30 minutes." So I do just that, talk to everybody, pray, call him back, and I'm like, "All right, coach, let's do it. Let's do it." So he's like, "All right, great." Coach, he's so funny, man. His personality, his joy, it like rubs off. It really rubs off on other people. So he's like, "Okay, great. We need you here tomorrow." So I'm like, "Whoa, tomorrow?" So we was like, "Okay, but let's do it, man. God opened up another door. Let's do it." So me and my wife, we packed up. We were in an Airbnb at that time. Packed up all our stuff, canceled our Airbnb reservation because we thought we were staying in Idaho for long term. Called Coach Reynolds, called my dad, called everybody. "Hey, this is what happened. I got an opportunity to an upgrade, almost a promotion, almost, to go to the IFL." And granted, this was the same team that I had just talked to, not too long ago. And I was like, "Man, if I could play in the IFL for this team, for the Bay Area Panthers, that would be so cool." And then I get the call from coach. So that was crazy. So We packed up that day. The next morning, we drove out 6 or something in the morning, 9.5 hours to Cali, where coach was waiting for us, and that's where my Bay Area time started.
That's insane. That's an insane story. A 9-hour drive just to get
Hmm.
there by the next day. I like how
Yeah.
he dropped that nugget after you agreed to sign with him.
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh, hey, by the way, I'm gonna need you
Yeah.
here tomorrow."
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
funny. So obviously, you ended up playing with the Bay Area Panthers in 2022. I think you appeared in 4 games, was it?
4 games. The first game I appeared in, I got hurt. The first
Gotcha.
or the third play of my drive.
That's right. That's right. I remember seeing that in your stat line. So you go on to collect a total of another 375 yards in 4 games. And as you said, you were basically not even there for a full game. So 7 total touchdowns to just 3 interceptions. So when you would combine everything in just 7 games, you have just under 700 total yards, 16 touchdowns to 5 interceptions during the 2022 season. With that being said, what can a team expect from you if they give you a chance to be the guy all year long in 2023?
What they can expect is hard work. Um, my dad, you know, he raised me up, to be a hard worker, to be a leader, to be someone who leads by example, first of all. And I've matured. God has matured me over the years to understand, how to talk to people, how to get people going. And when I was younger in my career, high school, I didn't say a lot. I didn't show a lot of emotion, but it was the quiet leadership that my guys would huddle around, and they would give me respect because I gave them respect. I was never the guy to yell at the receiver for dropping a pass because I knew, the golden rule: treat others how you want to be treated. I knew that if I messed up, if I made a bad pass, if I missed a receiver, I didn't want them, doing the same thing to me, getting mad at me, throwing a fit and tantrum on the field. So that was one thing that I, prided myself in is having the best relationships with my guys possible, because it's like the military, not even close in terms of, the commitment, but those guys are willing to die for each other. They're willing to die for the country because they put the time in. They you know grinded with each other, and they respect each other to a point where they'll lay down their lives. So I want to have the same mentality for my guys on the field. And in terms of skill wise, um, I can adapt. Um, growing up, my biggest hero was Michael Vick, but early in his career, he was considered a runner who could throw. And I mentioned, foreshadowed this a little bit earlier. I didn't want to be, through high school, I didn't want to be a runner who could throw. I wanted to be a throwing quarterback who could run. And if you know sports, if you know quarterback, there's a big difference between those two. So that's what I worked towards. I take pride in my arm just as much as my leg. So, if there's any person, just because I played receiver, doesn't mean I'm going to just be, scrambling every play. I'm going to adapt to what is needed because I can throw and I can run.
Absolutely. I would argue your time at receiver might have helped you be a better passer. You know where the receiver is going to want the ball. You know when he's going to make his break. I mean, in my eyes, your experience as a wide receiver probably made you a better quarterback in general.
Mm-hmm.
But to your credit, I really like that you said Mike Vick was your hero. Over my left shoulder here, I actually have a Mike Vick signed ball. And then over my right shoulder, I got Donovan McNabb.
Oh, let's
Both
go.
very, very, running quarterbacks that could
Yeah,
throw, or quarterbacks that could throw that could also run, I should say,
right.
because both of them were very good passers.
Exactly.
Um, so that brings me to my next point. I mean, obviously, when anybody looks at your game, they're going to see the mobility that pops off film. But really, what stuck out to me when I was watching your film is your arm talent. I mean, we
Mm.
saw it in that first clip that I played in the intro before I brought you in. You dropped that pass right in the bucket from basically your own 5-yard line. And I know it's a 50-yard field, but that takes some accuracy. I mean, you saw the ball hit the receiver just as he was about to step out of bounds. If you had floated that just a second longer, that's out of bounds. It's not a touchdown pass. It's not on your highlight reel. So talk to me about your training routine and how you continue to improve your accuracy and arm strength. I hope you retired that mattress of yours.
Yeah, that mattress is definitely retired. So after the mattress, I was like, yo, this isn't working out. I met with coach, and at the same time, Coach Kali'i, at the same time, went in online Amazon and got a throwing net. So I was like, I'm gonna be having these trainings with coach, but when I'm not with him, because that was maybe sometimes 3 times a week, sometimes one time, based on the schedule and the availability. But I was like, I need to be putting in work because there are professionals out there that I am looking to beat out who are putting in more work than me and who are already at a higher level than me. And I'm basically playing catch up. So I would use that net. I would throw into it, work on my accuracy, work on my footwork, go to my trainings with coach, and he's really the one who broke me down and basically retaught me how to throw from scratch. Because what I learned in high school, what I learned in college, and having that big gap in between, there was a lot to work on. So he retaught me how to throw, how to be quick with my arm motion, how to be compact, which results in better balls, tighter balls, being able to throw the balls in smaller windows. So he grinded with me, man. Late nights. It was a group of us, some of the high school quarterbacks back home, some of the high school receivers, and we would go out late nights to go train with him. And he was doing it, out of it, the love of his heart, and because, he's a genius in his mind. He wants to be able to coach you up from scratch and see your progress and see the end result. So that's exactly what happened through that process, and I trusted in God that whole time, and because that process was. I try to maintain that same routine, going out on my own and or just working on footwork, or and going out and training with my QB coach.
We lost your mic, buddy. You're really quiet all of a sudden.
I can hear you now. Was I muted?
Okay, perfect. No, you weren't muted. It just got quiet all of
Okay.
a sudden. We heard most of what you said. There was just that tail end.
Got you. Okay.
So anyways, I've got one last question for you tonight. I've taken up enough of your time, I feel. I obviously prefaced this question by telling you off camera so you could give a little bit of time to think about it. Which offensive scheme best suits your specific skill set, and how would you say you're best utilized within that scheme?
Through high school, through college, even a little bit in the arena league, I've been used to spread offense, with the run pass option. So that's something that I'm good at. I've done it, pretty much my whole career. But when I was thinking about that question, I was like, it's kind of a trick question because I'm not a first round draft pick. I wasn't picked out of college, where a coach is able to form an offense around that player. So coming from my position, the best scheme that fits me is the scheme, whatever scheme the coach wants. So whatever the coach wants, I'm going to adapt to it. Obviously, if I need to run more, I will. If I need to pass more, I will. If we need to do whatever we need to do to win the game, because that also deals with the personnel as well. So the weapons, the people you have on your team, your offensive line, do you have more time or less time? The receivers, do you have guys who can get open quickly? Do you have guys who can get open, long? So all of that takes account. So my main thing right now is to just get on somebody's radar, get on a team, because from there I can learn, I can adapt, and I can do it quickly. So yeah, that's kind of my answer.
Hey, that's a great answer. I like it. You obviously put a lot of thought into it. And you're right. It is a little bit of a trick question, especially for a quarterback, because you kind of just get put in the scheme and you're expected to learn it and make it work. And I mean, I love your answer there. So once again, Isaac, thank you so much for spending some time with me tonight. I mean, I've had you for a little over an hour now. I think I'll let you get out of here and have the rest of your night to yourself.
Yes, sir. All right. I just want to say, God bless you, bro. This has been a cool experience. I always dreamed of when I was a kid doing these types of things, having a documentary written on me one day. Those are things that I dreamed of as a kid. And fast forward, maybe it's all, still possible. And the Bible says that all things are possible through Christ. So he is my strength. And he's the reason, he's the person I'm spreading through my gifts. And so bless you. Thank you to everyone that, has supported me. Thank you to my parents, my friends and family. Even the people who have passed me at the park when I was training by myself just to encourage me. I'm so grateful, so humbled, and I wish you the best.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me. And once again, I wish you the best as well in your pursuits of your next team. And once again, if there's anything I can do to help, just make sure, I'm just a message away. I'll do whatever I can within my power.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your night, and best of luck for the 2023 season.
Thank you. All right, man.
Absolutely. Have a good night. So once again, guys, that was Isaac Hurd, free agent quarterback. So if you're a coach and you're currently looking for a quarterback, looking for a guy to come in and compete for the job, whatever that role may be with your team, Isaac is your guy. I mean, you obviously heard him talk about it here. I talked about it at length. He's an unbelievable athlete. He's got arm strength for days. I mean, literally, he belongs on an outdoor field. In my personal opinion, his skill set would be best used outdoor. But with that being said, he obviously was pretty adept at playing the indoor game this past season as well. And I truly believe that whatever team he ends up on in 2023 will be highly beneficial for him and for them. I believe that he's got a lot left to give. He's just scratching the surface in his abilities as a quarterback. And Gabriel Martinez says he would look good in black and blue. Well, with that said, Gabe, why don't you shoot me a message? We'll talk a little bit. I'll get you his contact information. But I'm going to play one more time his quick highlight video that I brought him in on. And then with that, I'll wish you guys all a good night, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Isaac grew up in the church. His father, Eric, a pastor. His mother, the worship leader. Spirituality, a huge part of his life. Faith getting him to this point tonight. Valve a wide right. Forward motion. Here comes the heat. Hurd lets him go. Takes a shot. Looking for Snoop.